Good evening, and thanks for joining us. Welcome back to our first Tuesday night webinar of 2023. We have a great lineup for the second half of your school year. We have webinars that will help your students on high-stakes exams, financial literacy, and we even have something special for Valentine's Day and for Pi Day as well. Tonight, we're really excited to have Kim Thomas and Dennis Wilson show you some of the ins and outs of the TI-84 online calculator. My name is Mike Houston, and I'm the moderator for this event. I teach algebra and calculus near Pittsburgh, where I use TI technology to make tough-to-teach, tough-to-learn concepts accessible to all my students. And again, with us tonight is Kim Thomas and Dennis Wilson. Kim is a national board-certified teacher who currently teaches college algebra, AP Calculus, AP Calculus AB and BC at Moon Valley High School in Phoenix, Arizona. She sponsors the Moon Valley Mu Alpha Theta Honor Society and Math Club and spends countless hours supporting students through their mathematics journey. Kim is passionate about integrating technology into the mathematics classroom for exploration, discovery, and visualization. In addition to teaching, Kim works with math teachers in a variety of professional development environments and is also a member of her school specialist team as a Title I coordinator, supporting students and teachers, and that's a lot. So Kim, thanks for making the time to be with us tonight.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
And Dennis has been teaching at Landmark Christian School in Fairburn, Georgia for the past 26 years. He is currently the mathematics department head for his school and teaches Honors Pre-Calc and AP Calc BC. He's an active member of the Georgia Council of Teachers of Mathematics and presents annually at their state conference. He has served as an AP reader for calculus for the past 6 years and formerly served as the president of the Georgia Association of AP Math Teachers. So Dennis, it's great to have you with us tonight as well.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here. Great to start the new calendar year with all you teachers.
And Dennis, would you mind just continuing to roll through and discuss our agenda for tonight?
Certainly. So tonight, we've already started with the welcome and introductions. And as Mike told you, we're going to try to give you a rundown on the TI-84 Plus CE online calculator. Want you to understand what it is, what it's like, how it's similar to the reliable handheld calculator you've always used. And while we do that and let you get a glimpse of it, we want to do some great math at the same time. So even if you are going to use the online calculator or if you're going to continue to use the handheld, you'll have some opportunities to see great math at work. So we're going to model an at-home activity, which Kim and I feel is an appropriate use for this online calculator. We're going to explore and apply a few of the apps that are on the online calculator. This is a big difference from the Chromebook app if you've ever used that. And we'll even throw in a little standardized testing example to see the power of the TI-84. And we'll remind you about how you can get some great activity similar to what we did tonight at the 84 Activity Central. And we'll finish the night with a webinar drawing. So some lucky participant has a chance to win a calculator tonight.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dennis. And Kim, do you mind talking through our expected outcomes?
Certainly. So our first outcome is I can describe the differences between the online and the handheld TI-84 Plus C calculators. So again, knowing what the differences are and really what the similarities are is most important for our classrooms. And then we want to do some good math, so you can apply some of these apps to explore and solve problems and probably some other features as well. And then part of your engagement is to kind of help us and for us to have this learning of identifying ways to implement the online TI-84 Plus calculator in and out of our classrooms.
Thanks so much, Kim. As a reminder, the session is being recorded, and we'll provide a link to the event certificate of attendance at the conclusion of the webinar. We'll be using the chat window tonight to send your own messages, but feel free to use the Q&A window as well if you have any questions for Dennis or Kim along the way. I know we'll do our best to get some of those questions answered live. So without further ado, Dennis, let me give you control, and you can share your screen.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. So, So right now, let me pull up our PowerPoint. So tonight, we will be looking at the TI-84 plus CE online calculator. And just to get us started, I'm going to take us to the process of accessing the calculator. And then once we're up, Kim's going to get us started on our activity. So I'm just going to open a new Chrome browser, and I'm going to directly type in the address. So 84 plus ce.ti.com. If you're not familiar with that address, it's going to be in the materials that are available at the end, but you can also find this at education.ti.com. When I press enter, I'm going to get the sign in page. It's going to ask me to sign in. I've signed in recently and haven't signed in with any other machines. That's what's great about this online calculator. I get one instance on any machine. So I can sign in on my laptop. I can move to my school computer, sign in with it, and it closes the instance that I was using before and pulls it up on that new computer. So I'm just going to sign in here, and it's going to pull up my TI-84, and you can see I had even a little graph the last time I had opened it, and it's there. So as we start to get started, I just want to kind of show you the handheld that you're familiar with is right there on the screen. There are 3 buttons over the side that we need to talk about briefly so that we can make use of them today. There's the screen capture, and if I push that button, it'll open up a window that allows me to capture whatever is on my screen, and I can easily download that picture or click copy. And this is real nice. Your students can now copy straight from that screen. And if they open up a Word document, they can paste it right into the window. And we'll make use of that in our activity tonight. There is,
And Dennis, I want to point
go ahead,
out,
Kim.
no
Yes,
wires. You just did
no
that without
wires.
wires. That's
Yes.
that's ease of use right there.
Didn't have to plug in the calculator, didn't have to open TI Connect. Exactly. Didn't have to figure out which student was connected. So I can turn that screen capture on and off. I can reset the calculator. And that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to click reset. It's going to warn me that everything is going to disappear. And when I do, it's all gone. One drawback that we're going to talk about here with the TI online calculator is that I can't send files to this. So I can't send programs. I can't send graphical database files. And so there is that drawback. But as you saw, when I opened the calculator, it did remember the state I was in from the last time I was using it. And then one last button before we get into our activity, there's a help button. And in that help button, it'll take me to the online help. It'll tell me about the calculator, but these 2 in the middle, the keyboard map and visit resources, are important. So I click keyboard map and it opens up a new tab. And this is a very useful thing. Over here in that far left column, you can see the TI-84 keys that I might want to press. And depending on whether you're a Windows, Mac, or Chromebook user, it's going to give you what keys you can press. And so obviously you can continue to use the mouse to press them, but there are times when the keyboard is useful. And then at the end, we'll come back to visit resources as we look at places where we can get more activities for using the online calculator. So let me pull this window over to the side. I'm going to grab our PowerPoint, and real quick, I'm just going to squeeze Chrome. And so there's my calculator off to the side, and I can have my calculator working, and I can have this. So I see real quick, we're getting some questions I think we're getting some questions in the chat window about the licensing. Okay, and so the licensing, you can buy an online 1-year license individually, or your school district can work with your ETC and work up a site license where each of your students could then get an address through your school's technology coordinator. And you can find more information about that on the website. So Kim, you want me to pull up the activity, or you want to talk about it before I do?
Let's go ahead and just keep that screen up there real quick, and then we'll
Okay.
pull up that activity. So I teach at a school with Chromebooks, and I just want to point out I know as adult learners, we don't necessarily like to split that screen all the time, but the kids are really used to that. And that's one of the features I really like about it, that it's in a web browser. It's not something that's embedded inside of another screen like a testing app or something like that. So the way Dennis is modeling it right here is really good. It is a license type of thing, but because it's connected to an account, a student could purchase it on their own, or a parent could purchase it for their student, and they would have access to it on their school devices, or a school could purchase it for their students. So those things, we're not here to talk about the purchasing, but I know that that is front and center because this is new. So it's not like everyone has access to this at this exact moment as we're sharing this. What we're going to do is we're going to gear ourselves into what we're going to call an at-home activity. And we realize that probably it might not be at home, but it's definitely going to be outside of the classroom. And this is a very typical thing. We'll go ahead and call this a preview for Pi Day, because we are in within a couple months of that. And so we're going to use scatter plots, and we're going to talk about circles and the relationship of their circumference to their diameter. And so Dennis has created this beautiful Google Slides show, in which we're expecting students to either asynchronously go through the activity all by themselves, or it's really easy to adjust and do components of it to kind of get to the learning, to get to the data collection, and then bring it back to class. But this is pretty much set up for like asynchronous learning, but you can definitely adjust it as you see fit. So we're going to measure some circles, and the directions is that you need to find some circles around you that are different sizes, and you need to measure them, and you're not allowed to use a ruler. Which, okay, how many students are going to have access to that tape measure that can go around circles at home? So we want to make this a leveled activity to where they do have the tools, or maybe you do want to measure it, but it is really kind of fun to make your own ruler, or measuring guide, I should say. It's a measuring tool. It's not really going to be exactly inches or centimeters. It's whatever unit happens to be there. And Dennis has done a great job of providing a video, so you will have access to this Google slideshow so that you could use this. And his video example is excellent in the sense that what he's done in the video is taken a note card and you fold half. And so this is my 1 unit of measure. This would be half of my unit of measure. And if you fold it again, then you would have your quarters, and you fold that again and you have your eighths. So it's really kind of an accordion. And what was nice is I picked a big enough note card that I actually just kind of accordioned the top, and then made my ruler to go around and measure some measure some circles. So again, you want to measure the diameter of their circle, measure their circumference. And so if Dennis, you want to flip to the next page, there's that QR that you could watch that video. We're going to go ahead and skip along that, because what we want to do is we want students to collect data. That's the really, really important piece here. And this has been done previously in other workshops. And so this is real data that was provided and real measurements. They came from people. So as part of this activity is the fact that it's not exact measurements. There's always some error in measurement. And so we have a diameter of 1 that's 3.375. And if you kind of scroll through, we also have a diameter of 1 that is 3. So we have this data here. And what we're going to do is we're going to use our calculator to put that data in. And so he's going to flip back to the other part of the slideshow.
Real quick, I want to just say that students have been pretty good about collecting this data. Teachers, you have to be a little bit careful with. Like, I was working with teachers who were doing it, and one teacher went through and measured the diameters, and then in her circumference column, she just multiplied it by pi. And so she was getting this perfect line of best fit. And I was like, oh my gosh, your data is perfect. And then realized she wasn't measuring the circumference. So you definitely want the students to be able to know that they're measuring both diameter and circumference, and we're looking for the relationship between the two. All right, so we're going here.
Yes, and that standard of measure, like creating your own standard of measure, connects to science standards, not to use standard too many times in the same sentence. And that's an important experience, and one that, goes across different curriculums. That's important for kids too. So as much as I'd like to measure with the tape measure, it's this activity works a lot better with just creating your own standard.
And kids love to name their unit of measure. They might name it the kim. And so it takes one kim in the diameter, 3 kims in the circumference, whatever they want to name it. And they get pretty excited and imaginative. And anytime they're going to engage, even on the peripheral of math, that's important.
All right, so inside this document, we're providing directions for the students. So they're at home, they can't, well, they could call a friend, but they're definitely not calling their teacher to figure out, okay, how am I supposed to press this into our calculator? So this is really designed for step by step. And the directions go to the website. And from the home screen, you're going to press stat, then 1. And so Dennis is going to press stat, and then 1, which is telling us to edit, and we have our list of data. So, and he has provided those screenshots, and at the end of this activity, we'll talk about how the Google Doc was created. And we need to put in our data. So what we're going to do is in list 1, we have our diameter, and list 2, we have our circumference. So our diameter is going to be 1, 1.5, 0.625, and 1 again. We're going to hit that arrow, go over to L2, which is our circumference, and it's 3.375. And you haven't seen the video, but this is measured to the nearest eighth at this point in time. So we have 4.625 is the next one, a 1, and a 3. So there's our data. We have that in there. Kids would like write that down on a little scrap piece of paper, or they would be entering it as they go, because they're really good about looking at that slideshow and previewing what's going on, probably like you're trying to do right now. Can I read that right there? So we've entered the data, we put the values in there, and we would like to we don't really want to get out of the editor yet, but to return to the home screen, we would hit set and quit. So we're just going to go to the next page. And the reason why I didn't want to hit out of that editor, because I knew what was going on, but I would like to screen capture, because the intent is that this Google slideshow would be given to each of our students, probably in a Google Classroom, and we need to get that screenshot. So on the online software, there's the camera up at the top. Dennis is going to press the camera. There's the screen. We're going to press capture the screen. There's the screen I would like. And then if you hover over it, I would like to copy it, or I can download it. I like to copy things and then paste them, but students might want to download them. It really is a personal preference. And then we go back over to our Google Doc and we paste. I'm a Control V person. Some kids do the right click and they go find it. That's a personal preference, and those technology skills are important to teacher students, especially if they're younger learners with the technology. I know that we have this, I'm going to call it a misconception, that students are really good with technology. It depends if they've had the experience to know that they're supposed to use those keyboard shortcuts. I know I can walk into a teacher's classroom and I go, oh, I never thought of doing that way until I see them do that. And so there's the data, because each of our students would be different. Any questions about that?
I just want to interject that throughout this activity, we're grabbing screenshots that are kind of peripheral to the activity, that are like, we're wanting to get that line of best fit, we're wanting to get that linear regression equation. But if you've taught, you know that most of your technology questions are being answered by things that was wrong on somewhere else. They didn't enter the equation right. They didn't, they might have left off one of the data pieces. And so when a student comes to you and they're like, I don't know why this is working, you're going to have a collection of screenshots here in their activity, and you can leave a comment that you need to go back and make sure that you entered in just as many diameters and circumferences that those needed to match. And so giving them opportunities throughout to show that they're doing what they need to do will help communicate to you any mistakes they might have made.
All right, let's see what's next. So then we're going to set the window. And looking at our data, and since we have the data still on that capture screen, we can exit out of it, and we have it on our calculator, so we have it on here 2 times. So looking at our data, we need to think through the window. And I really like these directions here because it's very explicit that I am supposed to pick my X-min, my X-max, so that my data will fit. And we're going to plot the diameter on the x-axis, and the circumference will be plotted on the y-axis. And we're going to fix that real quick right there, because as math teachers, we naturally go to that radius. And you know what? Students who remember their formulas will do that as well. So we're just going to go to the next page, because there is no hint here. There is nothing that says, but it says I'm going to put a screenshot here. So math teachers know Zoom 9. And all of our students have learned that. No Zoom 9. I actually want you to think about it. So we're going, can we do this on the handheld? Absolutely. And in fact, this is the same activity on the handheld. The only thing is taking the screenshot. The screen captures would require using TI Connect, a wire, and some other pieces. We're going to go ahead and do the window right now.
Just respond to that as well. One thing
Yeah.
that we also have that you will have available is the students have, we have a not just the Google slideshow as an activity, but the instructions in a Word document. And so students could take that information and try to go through it. You just wouldn't be able to collect the information unless they brought the calculator, the handheld in. So you wouldn't be able to get those screenshots in that way.
Great questions, by the way. So we're going to go to our window. I personally, we do press window, right?
Okay. Well, I thought you were going to give me your personal preference on how to get
I
the
am,
window.
but I wanted to see it. So personally, I like to see the x-axis and the y-axis. So my x-min is going to be a -1. And it could be anything different, but I do like to see that x-axis and y-axis. And then I can see that my largest diameter is 1, so I'm going to go to 2. I'm not worried about a square window, but I do want enough to be there. And I'm okay with counting by ones. I probably should count by something else, but that is a personal preference, and that's a really good discussion for kids. I know when I do windows in the classroom, it's so hard to get kids to have windows different from me. So that really is my goal. And this provides that opportunity where they have to be creative in this piece, but also purposeful. We're going to go down to y-min. And again, I'm going to put a -1 in there. So I want to be able to see that x-axis. And let's see, I'm looking at this 4.6. I'm going to go with 6. So I'm going to go a little bit above 5. And I'm good with counting by ones there. And then nothing else I need to really mess with. So I believe we could hit graph. And I need to hit graph. I need to check that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit graph just to make sure. And we haven't put in our data yet. So that I'm looking at this and I'm really not liking my decision for y equals -1. So I am going to ask Dennis to switch that real quick on the window, not y, the x, sorry. And I'm going to change that to -0.5. And in the handout, it is asking for a screen capture of that window with the window, not the data. So that's where kids might have to go back and edit going through this activity or not. It just depends, but I'm pretty confident this will work. So if he presses that window button, how would we take the screen capture? We would just press the camera, which kids are really good with that. The other piece though is you do have to hit capture screen so that it changes to the next screen, and then we'll copy it. And then in that Google Doc, then we can put in that screen.
Ira made a great suggestion about Jason's question about doing this on the handheld. And she said students could just take a picture of their handheld with their phone and then post that into the Google Doc. So, you know, mixing technologies, which our students are certainly adept at, taking a picture with their phone.
Absolutely. In fact, I have a rule in my classroom. If it's a calculator question and they have a question for me, I'm like, I need to see a picture of what's on your screen. And they will get into that habit of that so that we can evaluate, is it their process? Is it what they typed in? Is it the technology? Whatever it happens to be. So there's our window. We're going to go ahead and go to the next step in their directions here. And it says, okay, now we got to plot the data. So again, presumably this is for every step by step if the kids don't know how to do this ahead of time or not. But once they do, they're pretty good at this. We're going to go ahead and see our data. So we need to go into our stat plot. So we're going to press second stat plot, or that would be second y equals. I tend to read the words. And we need to turn that on. So we're going to press enter to turn it on. And I do want to scatter plot, which is the first one. I know that my independent variable was in list 1. I know that my dependent variable was in list 2. So all of those things are going to work right there. And we want to see the graph. So we can actually just press graph to see the picture now that it's turned on. And there it is. That's a beautiful graph. I did a good job with adjusting that window to make sure that we see it. It looks pretty decent. We could critique whether or not we want to square it up or not, but the goal was to get data on there and then analyze it. And we can kind of see in that preview that we're going to take another screenshot. So again, evaluating step by step because the kids aren't in the room. This activity was designed, the kids weren't in the room to do all of this. Or it might be, this was a lab that we were doing in the room and these are the mile markers to say that we got to this step. Now we can move on to the next one, however we want to do that. So we'll go ahead and hit the camera, take a picture, remembering to hit capture screen, copying and paste.
I'm using your Control V shortcut there, Kim.
There we go. So Control V. And kids, you have to write that one on the board sometimes because V sounds like other words. So, but yes.
So my friend Amin Lalani says it's V for verbatim, because when you want something to be identical, you want it verbatim. And so Control V so that it's a verbatim copy of what you have. And so that's helped me communicate to my students. Amin's suggestion has.
That makes perfect sense. I love that idea. That is a great idea. C for copy makes sense. P for print, because they want to use paste. I'm like, remember you are printing on a computer first. And they're like, oh, that's why we can't use P. All right, so our next thing is, okay, so we've captured a screenshot of our scatter plot, and now we're going to go find that line of best fit. And the directions are here to find the line of best fit. Again, you can choose many different ways. We're going to go ahead and do the linear regression. And so those directions are here. And so we're going to press stat. We're going to go to the, is that right? I'm just reading it off here, stat, and then you go to the right, operations. And for, I think it's second stat, isn't it?
Sorry, I pushed second stat accidentally.
Ah, okay. I'm like,
Right.
that wasn't
So
what I
I'm going to just
expected
go
to see.
home. You know, I always tell my kids, you don't know like where you're at, just go home. So I'm just press second mode to quit and go home. And so now I'm going to follow Kim's instructions. I wasn't seeing what I wanted. So I start over again. Stat, go over, and number 4.
Linear rigor. That.
Okay.
Yep. Linreg.
I'm guessing we're an algebra student doing this and not a stat student since we chose 4, right?
Yeah, I think we are
Okay.
at this point in time. But I think that's also another important thing before we send students home. If this is the first time they've touched their calculator, there might even online or in person, is to know that how to go home by hitting that second quit and knowing that it's okay to start over. Because they are navigating this. A lot of them are navigating it with a touchpad instead of a mouse. Honestly, they might be better at touchpad than they are with a mouse, but it is, sometimes you have to kind of think about that. So my X list, my independent variable is in L1, I'm good. My Y list, my independent is in L2, so we can press down. I would like to store this equation someplace. And the directions are right here, and it says that we're going to go to alpha, getting those soft keys up above, and we want to press the trace button, so alpha, to get F4, and to select where we want that to go. And since this is the first activity we've done, Y1 I assume would be okay. So we're going to pick Y1. And then if we go down and we press enter on that calculate button, we will have a wonderful calculation where we can see those values right there. We now see that the A, which is representing our slope, is 4.04. Our y-intercept, our B, is negative 1.16 and some change right there. And looking ahead in our slideshow here, I see that I'm going to have to write down those equations. So let's go ahead and see what we need to do there. So write the equation for the linear regression. We can type it in. We could take a screen capture of it, but it's nice to go ahead and type that in, and whatever it is that you use in your classroom for the number of digits you want to display. In mine, it's usually 3. Sometimes the kids will write down all of it.
Don't get around here.
Yes. Well, because all measurements were estimated to begin with. And then we're asking, what's the slope of your line? So can they interpret these values to us? Because it didn't say y equals mx plus b, it said ax plus b. And then it does ask us, what does this value tell you about the relationship between the circumference and the diameter? And just for fun, making sure you guys are awake, is what do you think kids would write in there? Like, to actually type out that answer and not say it out loud, really, that's a skill.
So in your chat window, does anybody have a suggestion what the kids might put in there for the answer? And as we wait, I will just say that one of the things that I've seen really great in this activity, especially when you have a large room and you can collect and data from multiple sources, I like in a conference session to give each person a different size standard and different size circles, and then we collect all of it. And right now, this value is probably off what we would want for a teacher, but it starts to get really close once you get into that, what the stat person would call a large N. You get about 30 responses that are measured well. We start to get into the neighborhood we want to. So let's see some of the comments we're getting. When using the line of best fit, they've seen 2 equations and they want to know the difference. So I'm not a stat teacher, but I know that B plus MX, that's really what those stat teachers like. And so if I'm teaching algebra 1, I like that Y equals MX plus B because they're used to. The positive relationship, students may think 4 should be the slope. It says as diameter increases, the circumference increases. The slope of 4 should it be rounded to make it more understandable. And then agreed, the students would say the slope is 4.04. What we're hoping as we get enough data and students understand that relationship between circle and circumference and diameter, what are we hoping for our students to do? Cam, what connections are we wanting them to make?
I'd like them to connect that, okay, I measured a diameter and I measured a circumference. And if I know the formula, which they can recite this formula, C equals pi d or C equals 2 pi r, that there is that direct relationship there between them. You know, the real question that they might kind of skip to, especially if they Googled it, is what do we expect the answer to be, which is the following one, right? We expect the answer to be pi. We're looking for 3.14. So when they get this 4, they might be like, wow, I did something really wrong here. Because they are expecting pi, they are expecting 3.4, the ratio of the circumference to the diameter, and knowing that that ratio is constant, which is why we did a linear regression. So the thing is that when you do activities like this with your students and you ask them to put words in there, You do want to make sure that you reinforce the fact that you asked for words and that they should explain something. What does this value tell you about the relationship? And you really want students to take some risk and put out their ideas of what they think it is, because from reading that, you will get a really good understanding of if there's a misconception or what they even thought that they were doing there. So that's an important question right there to kind of think back if you're going to grade this and do this digitally, is to make sure that you reinforce the fact that I just didn't want you to copy everything down on this activity, and taking that risk and having that conversation when you come back.
One
So
of the great things that we hopefully get the students, they'll, especially if they chose a large standard and they have it to the nearest eighth, as they measure their different objects, they're going to be really frustrated that they're not getting good precision. And so one of the things they'll know is that, oh, I need a more precise instrument. And students will understand the difference there because they made an accurate measurement. They just didn't make a precise measurement, but that precision of measurement will lead to more accurate results for us as we go by. Ooh, and then Michael's asking about this negative
intercept, yeah.
intercept. So that's always a good conversation. We of course are hoping that that intercept's going to go closer to zero as we get more values, but there is something to be said about that.
Now, before we leave this activity, because we do have other things, I want to make sure that we move on. Will you hit graph? I don't think we hit the graph. There it is. So I think that graph also tells some things for kids too, but an important activity, one that we can copy screens in. Definitely, if students don't have their own personal handheld to be able to use the technology that they're using in their classroom. So the vision is if I have a class set of calculators, my kids have one-to-one devices, they still can go home and have on their one-to-one device the tech tool that we're using in class. I do know that when I'm in class, I do like them to have their handhelds because there's less distractions with it. So, all right, are we ready to move on, Dennis? I love this activity.
Let's mention a second about we were going to say how we built this.
Oh,
So
yes, we do need to do that.
one thing, I would distribute this in a Google Classroom, adding this file and making sure each student got his own copy so that when they submit the assignment, I get a new slideshow from each student with their answers in it. So if you're familiar with Google Classroom, that's a important idea. If you haven't, like, just go ahead and Google Google Slides as a Google Classroom assignment, and you'll see some great suggestions about how you can create one with the slide. And I like this because the steps are here and the answers are all there. And then when we created this, we didn't actually use the handheld. We used TI Smart View. And like, I love the screenshots here because I used the screenshots in the PowerPoint we made for tonight. But what I really love about TI Smart View is if I did decide I needed that stat left and then 4 to get that linear regression, I'm doing the activity, and as I do the activity, the key press history is right here. And I'm just going to go down and select those keys. And then right here, that copy button, I copy those. And if I go back to that Word document I had open earlier, I can paste those images of the keys in. And so it's really easy using the TI-84 Smart View emulator to create these documents of instructions. It's not like it's not a chore because you're going through the activity yourself, and as you do, you're collecting the images you need to make it. You want to say anything more about that, Kim? Or
Nope,
okay.
I think we're good. I can say that I love being able to just take those key presses. They're real important. I was honestly looking up pricing for Myra's question, and I found a link that I'm just going to put in the chat because it's just like the first answer by the other Michael. It wasn't what I thought of off the top of my head. So I'm going to put where I got the source from.
So that's our activity. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the applications. And as I mentioned earlier, if you ever use the Chromebook app, which was a very useful tool, one thing that it did lack was that you could not access the applications that are on the handheld calculator, but now in the online calculator in the browser window, we can access those applications. So Kim's going to talk us through some of these applications and what her favorites are. And then later I will talk about one particular use of one of them. But before we do, I'm going to reset the calculator, Kim, just so that it's a blank template and so that they can see that happen. I have that kind of clock rewind right here, and I'm going to press reset, and I'm back to that first state.
There we go. And just so people are clear with that, if he presses Y equals on that reset, we have removed everything. So it has gone back to that default state. And that's a very easy way to just get things beginning back at the beginning. All right, so we're going to go to the apps. So APPS. And one thing that I love to show students again is some things that are embedded into their calculator. And so under that apps button, which is the second row over next to the math button, we have what's on the screen on their PowerPoint here. So we have the finance app, and sound just sounded kind of weird there. There we go. We have the finance app. We have Cabri Jr. We have the cell sheet. We have Conics. And the periodic table, polysim, probability sim, science tools, and there's a couple more underneath there. Transform, and that's it. So we don't have the ability to add to the software that's online, but those are the ones that come standard to the calculator. We're going to go into periodic real quick.
It's the quickest way to get there, Kim.
6, just press 6. Yes, the quickest way is to press the number, and it says press any key, and we literally mean any key. So any button on that. And it's a beautiful screen. I love just kind of showing this to kids at the beginning because they know what hydrogen is. They've seen the periodic table in their science class, at all science levels, really at the high school level, and even at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And you can use the arrow key to explore. So just press your arrow key, and we can see that it's moving in the direction. It's telling me things like the name, the symbol, and its number. And so find one that we can say, go back to lead. We like lead. So here's lead, maybe.
You have to tell me. It's been a while since I taught chemistry, so where is lead going to be?
I don't know. I saw lead and you were pressing so fast. We'll go with anything. So lead. Nope, it's all good.
It's near. There it is.
There it is. So lead, PB for lead. Who would think, right? So if you press enter while you're on there, it will bring up more information. There's its atomic number, the symbol, the weight, all of this different things. And there's an arrow that says that more things are going on, and the melting point, the boiling point, and we can do other things with it. So it's just kind of fun to get kids going. And when they're in a chemistry class, to know that it's right there. And again, it's a resource. It's a resource and a tool that they have at their fingertips as they are using it. And then the buttons on there would actually do some things, like if you hit the zoom button, which is right underneath the word list, it's going to go back to a list of things, which was probably easier to see. If you hit table, it's going to go back to the table, and that's the color, and you can see the colors on things. Options will do some other things.
You can sort it by name or symbol if you're
Yes.
quite sure. Okay.
Yeah,
So
there's
you
a
were
lot of
saying
different
going
things.
to options?
Yeah, under options, so either of those. You can highlight regions, you can graph some different things. So there's a lot of cool things to do with that. It's not just the picture of the periodic table, because I know sometimes people will go, well, that's just really tiny, but everything pops out at you. So that's a fun one to get kids to know where the apps button is, but also to connect to other classes. And then you can hit quit and it will quit at some point in time.
When we were working on this, and you were showing me this, Kim, I went to my AP Chem teacher, and he was enthralled that the students could access this information because their AP Chem textbook is huge, and that's their general source for all this information. And so now they have it right there on their calculator. They can pull it out and make use of it and not have to carry around or look it up on their phone. They don't have to pull out their phone and go, oh, what is this? They can do it all in their calculator.
And I would say the font in their calculator is bigger than any of that little tiny font that would go into something that would have the detail that's in that calculator. All right. So that's one app that's a fun app. It's colorful, and it has always been on a TI product since I can remember. So I can't say always, always, but every TI product that I have touched has had that on there somewhere since we've had apps. So that brings us to a math problem where we'll use a different app, right?
Right. So we're going to look at a little bit of linear programming. And so this is in my school, this is taught in Algebra 2, and then we come back to it in our multivariable calculus class because we get out of the linear part. But this is an idea that could be approached even at the Algebra 1 level when you first start talking about graphing or graphing inequalities. I won't sit on this question too long because we're starting to near the end of our time, but basically we have a certain number of tomatoes, a certain number of onions, and we want to make tomato sauce and salsa from them. And we get a certain amount of profit from the tomato sauce, a certain amount of profit from the salsa, and we want to maximize that. And so like really the challenge for an Algebra 2 student is, of course, like turning this information, this context, and putting it to mathematical equations. What happens so often though is that's the part that gets done, and then the slog is like, okay, I've got to graph this, I've got to find the intersections, and we're removing the really good, interesting math that's happening. And so we're going to go ahead and do the interesting math so that we can see how the calculator will help us. So we have, here are the equations that would have come out of that problem where we have 4 inequalities and we have our profit equation. And if we have done linear programming, we know we're going to get this polygon region that is an intersection of all of these inequalities, and the vertices of the polygon are the only places where we can get a maximum and a minimum value. And so we want to find those. So I'm going to press that apps key, and I'm going to use the inequalities app, inequals, right here at 5, and press enter, and it goes ahead and it tells me I can press any key. It gives me a little reminder here, inequality menu, second calc, and I'm going to show you it always has that menu reminder for us, but I'm going to press any key, and you can see that it looks very similar to our y equals window that we would see without it. And so just to make that point, I'll pull it up here. You can see the y equals window here. It looks very similar to what we're getting on that handheld, but we've got an X equal, we've got a quit app option, and then it gives us instructions. It says select relation, and it says to go to the left and press enter. So I'm going to go to the left and press enter, and I'm going to go ahead, and I've already done the algebra that a student might do so that they can graph this, and I'm going to change this into, where did I do that? Here it is. Okay. I'm going to change it into y is less than or equal to 36. Whoops. And then I press enter to get to the OK key and then enter. And you can see now no longer is it y1 equals, it's y1 less than or equal. And I'll move to the right so that I can put in 36 minus 2x. Okay, and right there, I'm just going ahead and using the keyboard keys that I know for the sake of time, but you can notice that as I press those keyboard keys, it's very like Smart View, and it goes red when I do that. Okay, so now I'm just going to put two of these inequalities in so that we can see how this happens. I'm going to go back over left. I'm going to hit enter. And once again, I want y is less than or equal. So I'm just pressing left or right, hit OK. And then I'm going to do 60 minus 4x, whoops, 4x, and
And
press
Dennis, I'm
enter.
just going to
Yeah, go ahead.
emphasize here, you're using X on the keyboard when
Yeah.
you did that, which that's a difference than using the teacher emulator software, because you have to use that X button on that one, I believe.
Well,
So the
so
fact that we can use our keyboard is really kind of key.
we can press, like if I press just normal X, it gives me that store button. Okay.
Gotcha.
And if I want one of the alphabet keys, any of the alphabet keys, I just hold shift so that I get the capital of that letter. So if I press shift P, well, that didn't work for me. I'm sorry. So shift X, that's the one is working. And so that's what I could get.
Okay.
Now, if I want that X inequality, I can come up here and I can click enter, and I'm going to get relationships in terms of X if I wanted. But what I'm going to do first, I'm not going to take the time to graph all those. I'm just going to go to my window and I'm going to change the settings. And I know Kim likes a little bit of margin, but for the sake of time, I'm going to make that 0, and the X max is going to be 20. And then Y, I'm going to go 0, and the Y max is going to be 80. And when I hit graph, it shades the two inequalities for me. Now that's not the region that we're interested in. We want the intersection. But once I have graphed the inequalities, it's reminding me what it did, what the same message when I turned on the inequality app, that the inequality menu is in second calc. One of the things I love about the CE, the TI-84 Plus CE edition, is I'm getting these extra, the resolution's allowing me to get some extra instructions there on the screen. So I'm going to press second calc, and that's the normal calc menu we see. But if I press to the right, there's inequality. And I'm just going to go down, and where it says unequal intersection, I will hit enter, and it shows me that intersection. And what
Wow.
we're interested in right now, I only put two of them in. So there's only one vertice that this inequality app is seeing. But if I put all four in, it would have gotten the four vertices I want. And I could go to alpha. I'm sorry, not alpha. It was second, right?
Mm-hmm.
Second calc. And I go over to inequality, and you can see point of interest trace. This is just like trace, but it's only going to trace through any of the intersections. And you can see it found that 12, 12, and it's telling me that's the intersection of Y1 and Y2. And so if we come back, we could have used the inequality app. Here's a picture of it where I've set them all up, but we could have found that maximum profit here. What I really like about that inequality app is how easy it is to find those points of intersection. And it does it even when the lines are intersecting off the screen.
Hmm.
So standardized testing, you can really easily put two equations into your y equals while that inequality app is on, and find the intersections even when it's graphed off the screen. So I'm just going to go real quick. I'm going to reset the calculator so I can get out of what I had. I'm going to go back and turn that app on real quick, which is 5. And I'm going to put these two equations in. Now, this is not the way the SAT is expecting certain students to be able to solve this. There's all these tricks that students who go to tutoring and learn. But there are some students that trick's not going to get it there. They're going to have a calculator in their hand and need to solve this system. So they want to find the intersection. So one thing that is useful for students is learning to graph equations in standard mode quickly. So I'm going to use alpha and the variable key. So alpha and the variable key, that's a newer shortcut on the CE. And you can see I get that nice horizontal fraction bar there. And I can type in -4 minus 3x, and then that's on top of 2. So really quick, I subtracted and divided to get that in terms of y equals. Didn't have to do any algebraic simplification on the paper. And once again, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get 19 minus 2x over 3. And when I press graph, you'll see the intersection's off the table. But if I use this inequality menu, second calc, inequality, point of intersection, it immediately finds the intersection that I have, and I can go ahead and tell that -10 plus 13 is 3, and there's my answer. So it's a really nice tool to quickly solve the intersection for lines without having to get that intersection in the window.
And I love that you're using that for test prep, because I know for me, I would go to a different app and do a system of equations, but this is faster because kids taking an SAT, ACT have done enough linear equations that they could just type it in that way and not have to mess with the window, which is really kind of cool. So I learned something today that I have not done with my kids before.
So just in the little minute we have left, if you go to the TI Activity Central, which you can find at education.ti.com, or if you're on the online calculator, you got Visit Resources. And if I click Visit Resources, it takes me in a new tab right to this page. And you'll find lots of activities for the TI-84 suited to the class that you're teaching. And you can even search by standards. Oops. So I think it's time for us to hand this back to Mike. Let me find my window for that. I will give Mike back control.
Thanks so much, Dennis. So we're really excited about the 84 online calculator and some of its capabilities for really you and your students. Feel free to start the conversation if you have one to start, or continue the conversation. We've already had some that started tonight on any of those major social media outlets. As promised, we are giving away to one lucky winner a TI graphing calculator of their choice, and tonight's lucky winner is Michael De Laurentiis. So Michael, congratulations. We'll be in touch over email next few days here to get some information from you, but start thinking about which TI graphing calculator you'd like to receive. To receive your certificate of attendance, go ahead and click the link that just appeared in the chat window. Normally at this point, we also give out a link for the documents. We had a little snafu, and the documents link is not ready or working right now, but I promise that link will go out in email, in a follow-up email that everyone's going to get automatically in a couple days. So you'll get a link in that follow-up email to their certificate in case you miss it tonight, the documents, and then also a link to the recording in case you want to watch any part of this again. And if you're watching this on demand, go ahead and copy that link into your favorite browser to receive your certificate. So again, Michael, I just saw your chat. Nothing that you need to do. We'll be in contact with you pretty soon, next couple days.
And I went ahead and posted I'm sorry, Mike, I just went ahead and posted a Google Drive link that will come out, but they can go ahead and grab it there if they want to get to that activity.
Thanks for doing that, Dennis. If you need to get in touch with us, maybe you had a question that wasn't answered tonight, feel free to give us a call at 1-800-TI-CARES or send us an email, ti-cares@ti.com. We really love to hear from you. When you leave the webinar tonight, a brief survey will automatically appear in your browser, and that feedback really guides us as we plan future online events. I think I mentioned in my intro, we have a lot of great online events coming up this spring. I'm really excited about it, but these events a lot of times come from your suggestions. So please feel free to share your thoughts in that post-webinar survey. If there's something that you'd like to see, feel free to let us know. Huge thanks to Kim and Dennis for everything they put together and shared tonight. Lots of good stuff. Thanks so much for bringing the 84 online calculator to the forefront.
Thanks, Mike. Great opportunity. Love to be here with everyone.
Thank you. It was fun.
I agree. And hey, this is our first webinar of 2023, but we're going to be back next week. So feel free to join us. Next week, we'll be talking about the ACT with Tom Reardon and Jeff McCalla. So come join us next week, same time, same place. Have a great night, everyone. We'll be seeing you soon.